Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the GBSN webinar on the institutional benefits of the Fulbright Specialist Program. So I'm Nicole Zephyrin. I'm the Communications Officer here at GBSN. I'll just be doing a brief introduction at the beginning, and then our presenter today is Christina Dean, who is the Program Officer of the Fulbright Specialist Program at World Learning. Okay, here's a brief agenda of our webinar today. I'll just do a really brief overview of GBSN, and then I'll hand it over to Christina. She'll go over kind of the background of the Fulbright Specialist Program, talk about the benefits of host institutions. She'll go over the project format and examples, and then she'll talk a little bit about identifying a specialist, the application process for the institution side, and then the project implementation, what the roles and responsibilities are. At the end, we'll do a Q&A. Depending on timing, we'll try to do 5 to 10 minutes. So to ask a question during the webinar, you can do this at any time without disrupting the presenter. Simply click the Q&A button on your toolbar, and this box will pop up. That's where you can enter your question in here. And then if you would like to send it anonymously, you can click the box and then just click send when you're ready. It'll put it into a queue, and then Christina can see all of the questions submitted at the end, and she'll pick and choose. Any questions that are not answered live, we'll produce in a report in a Word document that will be sent out as a follow-up after the webinar. Okay, so briefly about GBSN, we're a network of 75 member schools, business schools in 40 countries around the world, all dedicated to our mission, which is to improve the access and quality of management education for the developing world. What we do is we cultivate this network to encourage partnerships, collaboration, knowledge sharing. We also administer capacity building programs in which our member schools serve as consultants and advisors on. So for more information on membership and what we do, visit our website at gbsn.org. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Christina. And one second. There we go. Christina, go ahead.
Great. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for inviting me for this program. I'm very excited to speak with everyone regarding the Fulbright Specialist Program and how host institutions can host a specialist at their institution. My name is Christina Din. I'm a program officer for the Fulbright Specialist Program. I work specifically with the Western Hemisphere and East Asian Pacific regions. However, we do work on all aspects of implementation for this program, so I'm excited to give everyone more information on the program. So to give you a brief overview of the Fulbright Program, it was first founded in 1946. The Fulbright Program is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. The mission for the Fulbright Program is to increase mutual understanding between people of the United States and people of other countries by means of educational and cultural exchange that assist in the development of peaceful relations. Some of you who are already familiar with the Fulbright Program might know that it is more or less an umbrella term to describe several various programs, some that focus on student exchange with academics, teachers, and professionals. The Fulbright Program has been around for about 70 years, and throughout that time, we've had more than 370,000 participants across 160 countries. So the program that we'll be talking about today is the Specialist Program. The Specialist Program was first established in 2001, and World Learning serves as the implementing partner of this program. To give you a brief background on World Learning, World Learning is an international nonprofit that supports international exchange, development, and education programs. Today, I would like to give you a little bit more information on the Fulbright Specialist Program and its overall goals and objectives. So for the Specialist Program, it allows host institutions in over 150 countries to invite U.S. professionals as well as academics to complete short-term projects. These projects typically last between 2 to 6 weeks, and they're designed by the host institution with institutional objectives and issues that they would like to prioritize. These specialists serve as the lead consultants on these projects for that 2 to 6 week period. In each year, more than 400 projects are implemented all over the world. In terms of World Learning's role as the implementing partner, we assist in the overall logistical administration for the specialists. We liaise with the U.S. embassies and Fulbright commissions within that local host country, and we manage the online portal for submitting the host institution project proposals, as well as the specialist roster applications for interested individuals for the program. There are several benefits for host institutions participating in the Fulbright Specialist Program. Host institutions can design and implement projects that tackle key problems or issues at their institution on a year-round basis. With the participation of these specialists, they can gain global perspectives from experienced academics and professionals to help implement these projects' goals and objectives. One of the primary goals of the Fulbright Specialist Program is to foster continued collaboration and long-term linkages between not only the host institution and the specialists, but the specialists and their networks, as well as their U.S. employer and home institution. So what are the types of host institutions that are eligible? There are several eligible host institutions that can participate in the Fulbright Specialist Program. We have institutions of higher education, government institutions. In the past, we've had host institutions in the form of government ministries such as the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, other congressional bodies, or foreign agencies that work on specific issues, cultural institutions that range from music conservatories, museums, libraries, non-governmental organizations, medical institutions that also include public health organizations, teaching hospitals. Essentially, host institutions cannot be for-profit institutions and have to have some educational aspects in submitting the project proposal. So projects can serve a variety of disciplines. Here you can see the main 24 disciplines, which give a broad overview of the fields that projects can be submitted under. However, essentially any fields can be submitted for projects proposals, as each of these disciplines have several subfields and specializations within that discipline. In the past, we've had projects that have cut across disciplines, such as law and education, business and public administration, even arts and education, and business administration. So I would also like to give a few examples of the project activities that host institutions can include in their project proposals, such as delivering a seminar or workshop, consulting with faculty or workforce development, developing academic or training curricula and materials. We've had specialists in the past that have graduated, that have lectured at the graduate, undergraduate, and PhD level, or conduct needs assessments or evaluations for programs of certain institutions. Overall, there must be an educational or training component for each of the projects. I did want to give one example of a project that we've had recently with a specialist who went to Universidad de Rosario in Colombia. Some of the main project activities for this particular grant included internationalization of the school's management program, consulting on curriculum development with their business administration faculty, advising on research topics for faculty as well as students, and providing presentations on a myriad of business topics to students and faculty. For this particular projects. Some of the resulting linkages were an exchange program that was developed between the host institution's MBA students as well as the students at Northeastern University. So there are a few things to keep in mind about projects in general. All projects must take place within the host country. When a specialist is traveling for a grant, we do not recommend that the specialist leave that host country, given the restrictions as well as the focus of each of the projects. Each project can only host one specialist. Now, while we do understand the benefits of hosting multiple specialists, unfortunately, to prioritize that relationship and those linkages between the specialist and the host institution, only one specialist per project grant is allowed at a time. For each of the project visits, they can vary between a minimum of 14 days to a maximum of 42 days in length. And this includes the travel time from the US to the host country. The way that we count the duration of the grant is the day that the specialist departs from the United States until the day they depart the host country. We feel that, especially with this short-term project length, it does allow for professionals, those that are in the practitioner realm that might not be able to take off half a year to a year to work with a specific institution. So this creates a happy medium with those from the professional field and academics who might not be able to take off much time to participate in a project. So projects can be framed as either single visits or multi-visits, depending on the needs of the project. While the majority of projects are single visits, we do have projects that are multi-visit projects. And these projects allow for the host institution and specialists to conduct needs assessment or begin project activities and then conduct those follow-on trainings and evaluations after those efforts have been put into action. For these multi-visits, they can be up to 3 visits per project. Each visit must be a minimum of 14 days, and combined total of all visits cannot exceed 42 days. All the visits must take place within a 1-year period to ensure that the activities of the first visit are still relevant by the time the second or third visit occur. For multi-visits, this is something that we do advise host institutions to first discuss with their local U.S. Embassy or Fulbright Commission. And I will be providing additional details on that in just a second. So next, what is included in the Fulbright Specialist Grant? So for the Fulbright Specialist Grant, the U.S. Department of State provides a round-trip economy class international airfare for the specialist, a transit allowance of $100 for that specialist to get to and from the airport, as well as a daily honorarium of $200 per day for the duration of the grant, as well as limited health benefits plans for the specialists during their time in the host country. For host institutions, they're typically expected to provide cost share in the form of lodgings, meals, and in-country transportation for the specialist during the grant period. During the project proposal process, host institutions are expected to provide details of these in-country arrangements for the specialist. In the past, I have seen host institutions provide for lodging in the form of international guest houses for their campus, hotels, homestays. Meals in the past have been provided either in kinds for the host institutions or via a stipend for the specialists to purchase their own meals. And the same goes for the in-country transportation. This can be provided also via in kinds or via a stipend. So who is a Fulbright specialist and how does an individual become one? So if an individual is interested in becoming eligible as a Fulbright specialist on a project, they must first join the specialist roster. So the specialist roster application can be found on our website. They first submit an application through the online portal. Now, this application includes 2 essays, at least 2 reference forms, as well as a specialist's CV and their contact information. This application is then submitted for a review by a peer review panel. This peer review panel is made up of former Fulbright alumni within that chosen discipline for the specialist roster applicants. The peer review panels review the applications based upon the individual's academic, professional, or artistic excellence, their cross-cultural communication skills, adaptability, and competency, as well as their overall benefit to stakeholders. So the overall benefit to their home institution or employer, as well as potential host institutions abroad. If the individual is approved by the peer review panel to join the specialist roster, that individual then joins the Fulbright Specialist Roster for a period of 3 years tenure. During that 3-year period, that individual is then eligible to participate as a Fulbright Specialist for a project. Next, I'd like to go over the types of projects, open and named projects, and how to identify a specialist for those projects. So host institutions who would like to submit open projects, as we like to call them, can submit a project proposal without naming a specialist. So essentially, if a host institution is submitting a project proposal, they are submitting a proposal that has, the key needs or issues that they need addressed, overall project activities, and once that is submitted and approved, World Learning will then assist in the recruitment of a specialist for that open project. we can do one of two things for the recruitment process. Typically, we list the open project opportunity on the specialist portal, where members of the specialist roster can view the opportunity and apply. They provide a brief statement of interest, their updated CV, along with their overall availability. World Learning then curates a list of qualified specialists to then send to the host institution a list of about 5 candidates who best match the needs of the project proposal. If we do not have enough applicants from the specialist roster for candidates to be sent, World Learning will conduct a specialized and targeted recruitment of the specialist roster of individuals that would fit the parameters of the projects, or we would do off-roster recruitment and look for other experts that might be well-served for these projects. So for projects which are named, these projects are where a host institution already has someone in mind that they would like to work with. Typically, these relationships have come from perhaps a host institution meeting experts at a conference through mutual networks, acquaintances, or previous encounters where that individual has visited that host institution, and the Fulbright Specialist Program would serve as a means to assist in any project activities that they might not otherwise have the funding for. So for the project proposals, host institutions may list the name of this particular specialist individual who they would like to work with. The name specialist does not have to be on the specialist roster at the time that the proposal is submitted. However, everyone who is named but not on the roster will need to submit a roster application and be approved to join the specialist roster by a peer review panel before they can be considered eligible to participate in the project. So next, I'll be giving a brief overview on the host institution application process. For the first step, we recommend for any host institutions that are interested in submitting a project proposal to contact the local U.S. Embassy or Fulbright Commission within that country. Each country has its own criteria as well as deadlines for accepting project proposals. It is important to note that there are some countries that accept applications on a rolling basis throughout the year, where there are other countries that have pretty strict competition deadlines where it only occurs once or twice a year. We also recommend that the host institution have this discussion with their local U.S. Embassy or Fulbright Commission to determine if their project fits the overall policy priorities for that country, and if there are any questions regarding the content or project activities listed. To find additional information on whether it is a U.S. Embassy or a Fulbright Commission serving your country, you can visit our website under the link of participating countries, and it will take you directly to the website of that country's U.S. Embassy point of contact or the Fulbright Commission for that country. So once you've had that conversation with the local Fulbright Commission or U.S. Embassy, they will be providing you additional information on the online host institution application. This is the link for applying as a host institution. Once you register for an account at this website, it will then take you to a landing page for the host institution application. So here are a few of the key fields required for each project's proposal. Contact information, project information. Host institutions will be able to detail precisely what the issue or the challenge is that they're trying to address with the specialist. What are the primary objectives of the projects, as well as a brief description of the proposed project activities. It's also helpful to have the overall timeline and logistical information for this application. So host institutions can list the proposed project dates. These are not always set in stone, depending on the availability of either the named or unmatched specialists. There is some wiggle room with these project dates. Along with the proposed activities and objectives, host institutions do need to detail their lodging, meals, and in-country transit plans for the specialists. And finally, depending on the needs of the host institution can select either this project being unnamed or open, where World Learning would assist with the recruitment of a specialist, or a named specialist project where an individual of the host institution's choosing can move forward with this project. So once a project proposal has been submitted on the online portal by the host institution, it needs to go through several steps of approval. The U.S. Embassy or Fulbright Commission for that particular country reviews the project's application. Now, please note that there is a limited number of projects that U.S. embassies and Fulbright Commissions can support each year. Thus, not all projects will ultimately be approved. So if a embassy or Fulbright Commission selects the project to move forward, that project would then move forward to the U.S. Department of State to be reviewed by the regional branch office along with the program office. Once a project is reviewed by the regional branch office, it then continues to be reviewed by the program office. If it is approved by the program office, the project is then considered fully approved. So once a project has received all levels of approval and an individual has been accepted onto the Fulbright Specialist Roster and matched either through the names process or the open projects process. This is an overview of the roles of what World Learning does, the host institution, as well as the U.S. Embassy and Fulbright Commission. Once a project is approved and a specialist is already on the roster, World Learning reaches out to that specialist to inform them of the project approval, issue the grant agreement and paperwork, work with them to arrange the international flights from their residence to the host country. And once they just prior to their departure, we send them a pre-departure packet of all the information needed prior to their trip. During their actual grant experience, we conduct a mid-program check-in call with the specialist about halfway through their project's grants. This allows us to help troubleshoot any issues that might arise and might need World Learning's attention. For the roles of the host institution, when a project is approved, host institutions should ensure that all logistical arrangements detailed in the application are ready for the specialist. So this includes the hotel arrangements or campus guest house arrangements for accommodations, meal arrangements, either in kinds or via stipends, as well as airport pickup arrangements, assisting in the arrival pickup for the specialist, as well as dropping the specialist off for their eventual departure. The host institution, it also provides the specialist with any background information prior to their departure and is in communication with them on the overall project activities as described in the application. At the end of the project grants, the host institution is expected to provide a final project report which details their experiences with the specialists, the overall deliverables of the project, as well as several of the project activities that were conducted during the grants. On the U.S. Embassy and Fulbright Commission side, they assist in confirming all of the local logistical arrangements, and they serve as the in-country point of contact for the specialist as well as the host institution. After the end of the grant, they also provide a final project report that is available for the State Department. So now I would like to open it up for questions. We provided the email, fulbrightspecialist@worldlearning.org, should you have any additional questions regarding the entire process, as well as our website for the Fulbright Specialist Program.
Okay. Are you able to access the questions, Christina?
Yes, I am. And I see we have a few questions already. So the first question, if I already participated in the program as a specialist, am I able to participate again, either with the same school or a different school? So in terms of eligibility for those who have already participated in the grants, there is a 2-year ineligibility period between grants. So if a specialist has already participated in a grant, the last day of that grant, 2 years from that, is when they are eligible to participate in another program. The other caveat is they must also be on the specialist roster at the time of the project start date for that second project. Another question we have is, what are some of the challenges that local embassies see in receiving applications from host institutions? Some of the challenges that they've seen in the past is sometimes technological. Sometimes there are some troubleshooting issues with creating a username and password, or from my discussion with some of the embassies, some of the content for the overall project's objectives and project activities. typically, during this conversation between the host institution and the local Fulbright Commission or embassy, they will help walk the host institution through what is expected for overall project activities and objectives. Regarding any technical issues, we do work very closely with embassies. If there is anything troubling the logins or anything that is not working in terms of logins for host institutions wanting to submit a proposal, embassies will typically reach out to World Learning and will assist in any IT troubleshooting for that. The next question we have is, you mentioned different ways to cost share. Is there a minimum dollar amount that has to be spent? There isn't a minimum dollar amount, but essentially specialists that are traveling to a host country to participate in a project should not have any out-of-pocket costs. They should not be using their honorarium to pay for any lodgings, meals, or in-country transit. That should be provided by the host institution, either in kind or via a stipend. There are more creative ways, depending on the funding of various host institutions, on how to provide those. And the host institutions can speak directly with their local U.S. Embassy or Fulbright Commission to see if any of those options would be available for them. So the cost share should detail from the host institution how the accommodations, meals, and in-country transit will be covered. So for our next question, can such program specialists be involved in graduate programs? Yes, we've had specialists in the past who have consulted on graduate programs for universities in their host country. And additionally, this person asked, can they be involved in developing research programs, involved in developing and established in grant and donation drives? Can a specialist be engaged again once the program timeline is completed? Can a specialist skill set shared between two institutions, but one, can a specialist skill set be shared between two institutions, but only one host country? And what if a specialist already interested in my institution and they've already been in contact? Can they go ahead and join their roster? So I'll take those questions one at a time. So yes, we've had specialists in the past that have been in the development process of research programs. I have noticed that in projects led by those in the STEM fields, but this can be of any discipline. Again, if a host institution is interested in having a specialist assist in developing research programs, that should be something that is listed in the project activity. In developing and established grant and donation drives, I do believe we've had some specialists that have assisted in that in the past. The one project that does come to mind in that was a specialist that was within the discipline of American U.S. Studies with a specialization of art and museums. And this particular specialist assisted his Cambodian cultural institution on how to strategize on funding for museums and art galleries. So it has been done in the past, but again, that's something that I do recommend if you're interested in detailing that in the project proposal and having that discussion with the embassy or Fulbright Commission. Can a specialist skill set be shared between two institutions but only one host country? The short answer is yes. We've had project proposals where, for example, we've had one university, but 2 to 3 satellite offices or other campuses that have also been involved in that project. And that specialist has either traveled to those other institution sites to complete the overall project activities. We've also had other projects where there have been 2 host institutions that have jointly put together a project proposal. And while there is only one host institution that can be the primary contact, that project proposal has detailed activities with working with other institutions who would benefit from that particular project as well. We've also in the past have had specialists who have done workshops for not only one institution, but that institution's network of either other universities, partners, organizations that they work with at the same time. So if a specialist is interested in your institution and you've already been in contact, they are more than welcome to join the specialist roster. If you are interested in hosting them as a Fulbright specialist, then you would submit a named project proposal with that individual's name in the project proposal. They can choose to join the roster prior to the host institution submitting the proposal to the embassy or the Fulbright Commission, or they can wait until after if the project proposal is approved by the Fulbright Commission or embassy. In that case, World Learning typically reaches out to the named specialists and helps to guide them through the entire roster application process.
Christina, can you kind of touch on the timeline for that? So if a host institution has a specialist in mind, what is the timeline in terms of submitting and getting accepted on both sides?
So for the specialist roster application, it is we accept applications on a rolling basis. However, because each application needs to be peer reviewed, there are 6 peer review cycles each year, about 8 weeks apart. So those who are interested in becoming a specialist and submitting a specialist roster application, they can submit it at any time. It just depends on when those cycles fall of when their application will be peer reviewed. On our website, we detail exactly when the deadlines are for each cycle and when the applicants will be notified of their roster decision. In terms of names projects and open projects, if a host institution is submitting a named project, we typically recommend that that named project be submitted about 3 to 4 months prior to the intended start date, just to allow for the full range of approval processes if that project is selected. It can vary in terms of the approval process, the review and approval process, because depending on the project application, there might be discussions between the program officers at the State Department or the Fulbright Commission and embassies with the host institutions on various aspects of that proposal. For open projects where there is not an individual named to that particular project, we typically recommend about 4 to 6 months of that project being submitted in advance of the project start date, just to allow time for the overall review process for the Fulbright Commission and State Department, as well as the recruitment process from World Learning's end.
Great. Maybe let's answer one more question, and then any questions you haven't gotten to, we can, detail in the written report that will be sent out.
Sure, not a problem. So one attendee asked, I have noticed that Fulbright commissions in several countries list priorities for specialist proposals. I have rarely seen business administration, business education, or international business listed. Are these priorities set by individual countries? Typically, what I've seen from Fulbright commissions and embassies abroad is there are a list of priority topics that they would like proposals to come from. However, that does not inhibit those from the business administration field to submit project proposals. We have seen business administration project proposals from countries all over the world. And I know particularly for my regions in Western Hemisphere, as well as East Asia and Pacific, this is a topic that is that has several specialists or specialist candidates that are willing to serve, and several Fulbright commissions and U.S. embassies that have approved projects within this discipline. So again, I do recommend that any host institution that is interested in submitting a proposal have that discussion with their Fulbright commission or embassy. But I've never seen project proposals that have been rejected because of being a business or international business field for those particular countries. Each country has a specific number of projects that they can approve, and they look at the overall projects during the competition process.
Great. And I just want to add, GBSN is here to encourage, our members to leverage the connections that you've made with each other, whether you've met somewhere or you'd like to make a connection. Your regional liaison is happy to facilitate introductions. So if you're a school that has a project in mind and, you kind of want to name a specialist within the network, GBSN is happy to look internally for an expert with the backgrounds and criteria that you're looking for, and to facilitate introductions, and vice versa as well. If you're a specialist in the US looking for a project overseas, GBSN is happy to do the same thing. So just want to encourage the partnership before the application process so that it's more smooth.
And one final thing that I would like to remind everyone, that for anyone who is serving as a specialist or applying for the specialist roster, we do list all the eligibility requirements on our website, but all of the applications for the specialist roster and specialists themselves are U.S. citizens.
Yes, right. You have to be a U.S. citizen to be a specialist.
Correct.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Christina. I know you covered a lot of information, and this was just the short version. So the PowerPoint will be available following the webinar on our website, and it will be sent in a follow-up email along with the questions that she's answered live, detailed in a Word document, as well as any ones that she's missed. I'll send her those questions and she can answer those. We'll also, the PowerPoint also includes the email, info email to Word Learning and their website. So if you have follow-up questions that you'd like to reach out directly or need more information, their contact information is in the PowerPoint. So we hope that you enjoyed this webinar and it was really informative. It inspires you to come up with projects, or if you're on a specialist side, want to look for projects, this is a great program. So GBSN is happy to encourage its members to work with each other. All right, thank you so much, Christina.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole, for having me on this. It was a pleasure speaking about the Fulbright Specialist Program. And again, to everyone listening in, please feel free to contact us with any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.